Hi, Gail. Great to see
Hi,
you again.
great to see you too. I'm so excited about today.
I know, me too, because conferring is the thing that I think teachers and parents find the hardest. Your child has written something, and what do you say? How do you
Mm.
respond? Who's in charge? What's most important? So, we're going to be taking you through today two short conferences with Diego. This is a student that I work with. He was in a fifth, sixth grade class in a high poverty school. He was one of the most low performing students and not really part of the classroom community.
Mm.
People would didn't speak up much, didn't see himself as smart. We have so many kids like that, right? And
Mhm.
so poetry, watch what happens when he is celebrated for what he's able to do. So I'm going to fiddle around here
Yes, do it.
and share my screen with you.
Well, and as you're doing that too, Regie, one of the things that I think we do when we're conferring is we see all the things they're doing that jumps out to us like, oh my gosh, they're not spelling that word correctly. Oh my gosh. And that's all we see. But this
Yeah,
one,
that's a
like,
really good point. It's a mind shift. Can you see this poem on your screen now?
yes, yeah.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
So we started off in the class, and this was a shared writing. And why I like writing in pen or pencil is you can see the revisions and the cross outs. And these were a group of kids that didn't feel very good about themselves, and we decided we were going to write a sort of a document of how we were going to be treated, and it actually went on the classroom door. Name calling. Kids were falling apart. Mrs. Sanders was the teacher. We've been called so many names: shrimp, shorty, midget, four eyes, blondie, Bigfoot, stupid, overweight, underweight, dumb, can't count. We won't tolerate this anymore. No more names. And then look what happened. We published that. They all signed it. It went on there. Look at the title of it: Mending Our Broken Hearts.
Oh, wow.
And it was the power of writing. And this was put in the office. Kids felt good about it, and it changed the way they treated each other, the
Mm.
way they were treated by other students. Now, this is not Diego. You're going to see him in a minute when I call him up for this is what I call a public conference where all the kids are watching, but I'm having a one on one conference with this student. And we were working toward publishing a poetry anthology. They had been immersed in a lot of free verse poetry. And by the way, you want to stay away from rhyming poems. That really, really hard to do. And the kids wind up kind of distorting their language, trying to make their words fit, the rhyme, rather than writing something meaningful. So this, as you can see, this is almost 3.5 minutes. And just take a look, and then we're going to talk about what do we notice. And I want you to see how much goes on, how much rereading, how much thinking, and who's in charge in just 3 minutes. Okay, thank you, Mike. These public celebration conferences generally take about an hour or so to do the entire class. Next, I confer with Diego, whose poem bowled me over with its strong metaphors.
Football. When I play football, I play with grown-ups. When I get tackled, it feels like I, whoops, I should have put I got. It feels like I got hit by thousands of trees. Trees cut me in half, so sometimes I play with grown-ups.
Okay,
Tackle hard.
they tackle hard. Okay. All right, listen, football. When I play football, I play with grown-ups. When I get tackled, it feels like I hit thousands of trees. Trees cut me in half. So sometimes I play with grown-ups. Now, what I really like about what you did, I was kind of surprised. I didn't know where this was going. When I play football, I play with grown-ups. So I was thinking, you're probably pretty good. But the part that I loved about your poem, when I get tackled, it feels like I hit thousands of trees. I'm going like, ouch. Like, I could just feel that.
Like, I forgot what his name is. Brian has an airplane, and then the pilot had a heart attack.
In the book, yeah.
Then he only sees trees, and the engine's dying.
Okay, so you got that image from a book that you read. That's great. That's what good writers do. You were taking something from literature, from a book that you read, and getting it in your poem. What I love when you said it feels like I hit thousands of trees, I'm thinking you're in pain. That really hurts. Trees cut me in half. Wow. And I'm like, you're just leveled on the ground. Yes. Okay. And then I wondered about the ending. I was thinking at the ending, ooh, it's such a great poem the way you started. When I play football, I play with grown-ups. When I get tackled, it feels like I hit thousands of trees. Trees cut me in half. And then you go, so sometimes I play with grown-ups. And I'm like,
that's not a good ending.
No, that's what I thought. So what you could do? You could just cross that out. Because I thought you already told us that you play with grown-ups, and I'm like, what's the punchline? What's the ending? What is it that you want to say here? So just cross this ending out. You just like one line, do it. Because you said it yourself. It's not a very good ending. Yeah, hold the pencil. Yeah, cross out so. And then just cross out this whole thing.
This?
Mm-hmm. And then let me read it again and see what you think, how you might want to end it. When I play football, I play with grown-ups. When I get tackled, it feels like I hit thousands of trees. Trees cut me in half.
I think that should be the ending.
Okay, that could be the end. Trees cut me in half. That could be the ending. Could be. That actually works better, doesn't it, teachers, and kids? But you know what? You might want to read it a couple of more times and see, am I happy with that? Do I want to add something else? Okay, good for you.
Okay, we're going to go on hopefully to the next video. And I want you to see what happens. Diego goes back to his seat. And honestly, I thought he was going to leave his poem just the way he ended it in that conference. And I want you to see what happens. And then we'll talk about it.
You remember that, Diego, we celebrated, where's Diego? We celebrated your football poem. And we talked about all the great things that you did. And we talked about that maybe you could change the ending. And then I thought when you left the conference, we're going to leave it the way it was. And then I was so surprised and delighted when I read it to see that you had put an ending on it that was way better than what you had before. So can I read the whole thing now? Football. When I play football, I play with grown-ups. When I get tackled, it feels like I hit thousands of trees. Trees cut me in half. I walk off the field in pain. Wow. Let's give him a round of applause. Before your last line was, sometimes I play with grown-ups, and I'm like, huh? And now you just put it all together, because that pain that you were feeling, it's right there in your ending. And you're going to have time to go through all of them.
Okay, and so let's take a look at what his poem looked like. I want you to see this, because if you didn't know what grade level this was, I don't know, I might guess that this was 2nd or 3rd grade. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's so important not to look at the paper. Look and just listen. One of the reasons why I always have the student read it first. Sit on your hands if you have to, so you're not taking out your pencil to make corrections. But if you look at it, you can get a mindset, oh, this is not a very smart student. And actually, he's written a wonderful poem, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. And so I wanted you to see it on the page and see how he crossed off. Sometimes I play with grown-ups down here. Mm-hmm. And then he added, I walked off the field in pain. Well, I want to tell you what happened, and then we'll talk about the poem. What happened to Diego was it changed his standing in the class. And the teacher had not really celebrated kids for their writing. And so when he came up, of course, he was quite nervous. He didn't know what to expect. It made him part of the classroom community. Diego did that? Wow, I didn't know Diego could do that. So Gail, talk a little bit about, let's talk about what you saw, what happened. Now, keep in mind that both of those conferences total, that was under 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And again, how much work you can do in a very short period of time.
Right. Well, I kept notes as you were going because I wanted to think about what you were doing and also what Diego was doing. And so you had him read the poem first. And then, okay, I'm asking, you took it over, and I counted again. You reread that poem 6 times. You read it from start to finish, start to finish. Tell me more about why you
Well,
did.
it's the power of a couple of things are happening. I always have the student read their writing. And if you're working with older kids, you might ask them, and it's maybe a long project, what part do you want us to confer on today?
Oh, yes.
Well, poetry, I love poetry because you can do the whole thing, you know? And again, it's that whole part whole. I could have looked at that poem and said, bring this back to me when you've corrected your spelling. And then you've lost that writer for the whole year, probably. You know, they're deflated.
Right.
So I always have them read it. It honors them.
Yes.
And then I'm just listening for the poem as a whole. What is this writer trying to say? I'm not thinking about how can he improve. And then I read it a second time as a whole. Sometimes their voice is so low that the kids can't hear it. But
Yes.
the first time is respect for the writer. Celebrate what the writer did. Celebrate his efforts. And then I'm reading it a second time, again as a whole. I'm not breaking it up yet. And during that time, I'm thinking about what I might want to say to this writer.
Okay, which is what we saw you do then.
And I'm thinking about strengths. What has this writer done well? Because if he sees, he or she sees himself as, oh, she thinks I'm a writer, and look at all the things that she noticed that I did well, they're more likely to be open to a suggestion.
Right. And this is public, as you said. This is a public conference. So how careful we all have to be to preserve that relationship in front of the rest of the class for the student.
Talk about what you noticed that I did as a teacher and how that impacted you, or what does that mean for how we work with our kids, our
Yes.
students?
Well, the other piece that really brought to my attention was the fact that when you moved to talking about the ending and having him be so part of it, you handed him the page and the pencil, and he's like, really? I mean, you didn't do it yourself. You had him, and you reminded him, you said it. You said you were going to get rid of that. So to me, it's like, okay, the students own this.
Yes.
It's their writing.
Yes.
That's, yeah, a huge.
And that is so huge, because it's interesting. We do an anthology when I work with poetry, and they pick their favorite. Each of the kids has written maybe 5 or 6 poems, and they pick their favorite. And very often it's not the one that I would have picked, you know, because I'm thinking of best work, and they're not thinking that way. But they see themselves. He sees himself as a writer. Sees himself as a writer.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I truly would have been fine with the fact that if he left the ending just the way he had it. But oh my goodness. And then the other thing that happens when he does something like that, which you didn't see on the video, is kids, look what Diego did. When you go back and you're working on revising your poems, take a look at your ending. Is it as good as Diego's?
Oh my gosh.
Make sure that your ending, and they're all looking around, really? She's talking about Diego.
Yeah.
And so it's such a, you know, and if we went back through it, if we looked at the video again, what's uppermost in my mind is, how can I celebrate this student? And so if you use conferring as a way to celebrate rather than how can I fix this up, oh my goodness, the benefits are just huge. You know, so for those of you who are watching, look at the poem again, look at the conference again. It's not that long. And I never mentioned spelling, never.
Oh,
Because if it's going to be published, if he wants it published, it's got to be perfect,
right,
like it is in the world. And so then spelling becomes important.
but
Then
we're
it
not
becomes
doing
important.
that first. Yet that's the first thing a lot of us see. So we really have to step back and say, I love the idea that you said celebration. If we really keep that in mind, of this is a celebration, how do we celebrate this writer? It helps us frame everything.
And you know, since this is pretty much our last video on the writing, I think that celebration has to become part of the classroom culture and the school culture. That changes everything. Kids want to be there. They want to do their best work. So it is kind of it's a mind shift to see the strengths of the students before you are seeing the needs. It really is. It's a mind shift. And when it happens, it's just a beautiful thing to see.
Which is so great why we got to see it today. We've got to see with Diego that you showed exactly what that looks like. I love that we got a chance to really process through this whole writing process with you, of looking at the idea of writing a poem, writing it on the moment, celebrating with you, reflecting on that, and then seeing how it would happen with a student.
Okay, so before we close, talk a little bit about the resources that we're going to offer.
Yes. So our next video, if you want to check in with us, we're going to talk about we're going to show you some examples of the resources that we have for you and the ones that we even use to lean on as we're teaching, as Regie was teaching these lessons. But we want to give that a special amount of time. So join us in the next video if you want to learn more.
Okay, and then the last thing that we wanted to leave you with, you might remember the other day when I told you that it was before I wrote my poem on the dandelions. I looked outside across the street from our house where there's a field, and the dandelions were gone. I was shocked because I wanted to cut a bouquet of flowers and show them to you, because I now truly see them as flowers, maybe even more than weeds. And so that was disappointing. And I thought, what happened to them? I mean, I don't think anybody mowed them down. This is in a, we don't have people from the city of Seattle clearing fields right now. And then lo and behold, yesterday, because I was still kind of wondering what happened, the dandelions were back. They were back mid-afternoon. They were back. And I was so excited that I cut a bunch of them. And I want to show you what they look like.
Oh my gosh, Regie,
Aren't they lovely? And those little purple flowers were right there. So there's just beautiful, beautiful dandelions. So then I went and I thought, here I am, older, and I have no idea why they're back. And so I went and did a little bit of research, and I found out that they are day bloomers, and they're like tulips and poppies, that they close up. They close up at the end of the day based on the light and the temperature, and then they bloom again the next day, which is quite remarkable when you think about it.
Very.
And scientists aren't, positive. There's a lot of theories about how do they do that. When you think about these flowers opening and closing every day for maybe a month, I'm not sure how long they bloom. But I kind of wanted to end with those because, we're living through dark times right now, right? Mm-hmm. And so this the dandelions reminded me of yes, there's the darkness, but then the light is always there. We have to look for it. I had to really look for a couple of days until I saw it happening here. And a lot of it's mysterious. We don't know why things work out the way they do. It's the week of Earth Day, and so it's really a good time to focus on the natural environment as much as we can, because that's where the light is right now. There's so much that we can't control. But if these lowly dandelions can find their way to sunshine every day and find the light, then I hope that we can too. And I hope that this video series that Gail and I have done together, it's just been wonderful to work with her. Put some light in your lives, make things a little bit easier for you as teachers and parents. And I hope you'll find some things to celebrate in your life with your kids and your students. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yes. Thank you.